Here's the deal. You know, it's really quite simple. Government agencies can only do so much. The government can only do so much. And if we're going to address this energy crisis in the United States and this job crisis in the United States, it's got to be individuals. And I think we have a plan. I know that we can do amazing things. I think that we have something that can work.
Should a foreign company be allowed to buy an American icon?
Middle Eastern countries are rich with profits from the oil trade, and they are all in the market for U.S. assets.
Foreigners are going shopping in the U.S., but is America for sale?
So, what the bleep happened to America? What has happened to our Constitution? What's happened to our economy? What's happened to the traditional rocket path of economic growth?
The weak US dollar is part of the reason why foreigners spent almost $277 billion last year investing in American companies. The US is still the world's largest market, and buying these companies is a quick way in. But many analysts say the US is living on borrowed money, and the next president will have to continue encouraging foreign investment despite the unease among some Americans.
As long as we have a low savings rate or a zero savings rate, either we will have no investment at all, which will be catastrophic for our economy, or we will finance our investment from abroad, which means that more and more foreigners own more and more of America.
Quick way in. But many analysts say the US is living on borrowed money, and the next president will have to continue encouraging foreign investment despite the unease among some Americans.
As long as we have a low savings rate or a zero savings rate, either we will have no investment at all, which will be catastrophic for our economy, or we will finance our investment from abroad, which means that more and more foreigners own more and more of America.
Yes, even when we've experienced a Great Depression or recessions, we always knew that they would be short and temporary, and that when we came back, we would come roaring back. It's not the case this time. Why? What the bleep just happened is by attacking the four core pillars of the U.S. economy: the industrial base, the financial sector, the energy sector, and the healthcare sector. Those are the four pillars that uphold the entire U.S. economy. The energy sector.
Because everyone is suffering except the top several percent. It's a very bad economic situation. There are no jobs. The inflation is starting to creep up. The real incomes of the majority of the people are falling. And it's a very dismal situation. The income distribution is so unequal. There have now been 3 reports, one from the OECD, one from the Central Intelligence Agency, the CIA itself, and one from the UN, and they all conclude that the United States has by far the most unequal distribution of income of any developed country in the world, and is actually worse than many third world gangster states.
Well, Dr. Roberts, looking at what you're saying, and why would there be any hesitation at all in taxing the millionaires, and why aren't the American people actually trying to put more pressure on their elected officials to make sure that the millionaires are taxed higher?
What's happened in the last 10 years is that the rich people have taken control over the political situation, and it no longer responds to voters. And so we see a situation today where the Congress does not want to tax the millionaires, but it does want to take away the payroll tax reduction, which affects poor people. In other words, it wants the taxes to go up on the poor people, but not on the rich. So it's a very strange situation where a tiny minority of very rich people control the government.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Dr. Paul Craig Roberts, for joining us here at Press TV, former Assistant Secretary of the U.S. Treasury.
They cut the rate on capital gains to 15% and dividends to 15%. So what has gone on in this country in the last, well, in very recent years, is a huge benefit to the very rich. And and not that much relief to people down below. And people, when you read about tax rates, Phil and I should have a higher tax rate on the income we get. We pay a lot of taxes, but it's really at a very low rate, and it's a rate that's less than half the tax rate that I was paying 25 years ago when I was making a lot less money. They have really taken care of the rich.
Here's the front page headline of the Nogales International newspaper from Friday. County cuts service. 879 streetlights to turn off. To save $90,000, cash-strapped Santa Cruz County in Arizona has decided to turn out the lights, to let 879 streetlights go dark. Times are tough right now, like they are everywhere in the country, and this is Santa Cruz County's effort to tighten its fiscal belt. They are shutting off the lights. And you know, it's not just Nogales, Arizona that is experiencing darker than normal nights right now. Last year, the city of Santa Rosa, California decided to do the same thing. They removed 6,000 streetlights and turned off another 3,000 more after midnight, an effort to save the city $400 grand. Earlier this year, officials in Fitchburg, Massachusetts, shut off more than 3,000 of their streetlights. Colorado Springs, Colorado, turned off about 8,000 of theirs. Colorado Springs has also dropped more than 40 of its police officers. And I kid you not, they have auctioned off their police helicopters. Not because crime is over, wahoo, in Colorado Springs. It's because they're broke. Philadelphia has decided to shut down 3 fire companies every day and 3 every night, rolling firefighting brownouts in order to try to save Philadelphia some cash. The Wall Street Journal reported recently on the growing number of places across the country where local governments are unpaving the roads. They are turning paved roads into gravel roads because paved roads are too expensive to maintain. It's not one little town's wacky Luddite solution. It's happening in North Dakota, more than 100 miles of road in South Dakota, in 38 counties in Michigan, and it's happening in Ohio, and it's happening in Alabama, and it's happening in Pennsylvania. Which means that somewhere in China, it is entirely possible that a business person sat down for a ride on a 200-mile-an-hour state-of-the-art levitating bullet train and cracked open the Wall Street Journal and read about how in America, we've decided we can't afford paved roads anymore.
Conclude that the United States has by far the most unequal distribution of income of any developed country in the world, and is actually worse than many third world gangster states.
Rutledge. All right, Dr. John, let's start with you. You fear a Chinese takeover of America?
Of course there's a risk of being taken over, at least economically. You know, countries that spend too much money get taken over by countries that don't, because the stock market falls, the income falls, inflation goes up, the currency goes down, and basically the power shifts in the other hands. And by the way, it's $2 trillion of our securities they have. They're very worried about U.S. inflation and about the currency. That's why they're taking moves on their portfolio.
So
he's somebody that had tremendous success for decades in the oil industry. Now, who's heard of the oil derivatives market? I couldn't describe it with a gun to my head. I really couldn't. But I knew that when they talked about money on Fox News and CNN headline news, what did they talk about? Price of oil, oil derivatives, futures and swaps. So I'm like, okay, I know that. So I did a little research, and I found out it's the most heavily traded commodity in the world. It trades in the trillions of dollars. So I thought, wow, that's pretty impressive. I then find out that he had a hand in the creation of that market. And the more I talked to him, the more I realized all he wanted to do was provide the best opportunity for the average person. Who thinks that's pretty genuine? So please do me a favor. Get on your feet and clap until your hands hurt for the CEO and the visionary of North American Power, Mr. Kerry Breitbart.
Have figured out how to provide jobs and how to provide opportunity to make those mortgage payments, to make those car payments, and also do something good for the environment, do something good to develop energy independence in this country, give to charitable causes, we support the development of wind energy. We are the Saudi Arabia of wind in this country. There is a consistent breeze that's blown from the beginning of time from the Canadian border to the Gulf of Mexico. Without blighting the environment, we could build enough windmills and generate enough electricity from windmills to power this country 10 times over. It can be done. And it's clean, it's renewable, it's safe. So our product is called American Wind. And because wind is a nationally available product. If you call your utility and say, I want to buy a 100% green product, what they don't explain to you, but what is absolutely universally true, is your electricity doesn't change. How could it change? I mean, they're not going to, change the wires and pipe just, energy coming from windmills to your house. No, electricity sources, production facilities of electricity, coal, natural gas, hydro, biofuels, wind, solar, all go into what, metaphorically, a big swimming pool. Out of that swimming pool, through the wires, comes whatever that mix is. So, the more renewable energy that exists and goes into that swimming pool, the greener that electricity is. So, since they...
Always been a racial disparity when it comes to wealth, but the latest Census Bureau numbers show the gap. You just won't believe how wide the gap is. Christine Roman studies these kinds of things. When I saw what the numbers were, I was shocked.
I know. And this is new data crunched by CNN Money. Tammy Luby at CNN Money. I'll tweet this as well. It shows that the recession hit minorities so much harder than white Americans. And now, Carol, white Americans have 22 times more wealth than black Americans, 15 times more wealth than Hispanic Americans. I want to show you the numbers for wealth. Median household net worth, according to the census, in 2010 for whites, $110,000. Hispanics, $7,000. Carol, blacks have less than $5,000 median household net worth. Everyone got slammed in the recession, but black and Hispanic families, Carol, got slammed way more.
Why?
And because of housing. Everything got hit, but because of housing. If you look at black and Hispanic families, again, on average, these are demographics, but on average, more of their net worth is tied to home equity. And more families had subprime loans, they got blown out, and now they have no savings, no investments, and they don't have the home equity, and so they really got hit very, very hard here. White families got hit hard too, but less of their income is from home equity.
What's the answer?
Well, the thing is that money is how you grow wealth. You grow wealth by a job and by money. And that's why this is so troubling and politically such a big, big problem for this country, because you want people to advance. You want people to begin to grow wealth, because out of that comes investments in a home, in an education, in your standards of living. So the real issue here is trying to make sure people get jobs, can get some savings, and can start to build wealth instead of lose wealth. The real issue here is trying to make sure people get jobs, can get some savings, and can start to build wealth instead of lose wealth. The real issue here is trying to make sure people get jobs, can get some savings, and can start to build wealth instead of lose wealth.
Here's the deal. It's really quite simple. Government agencies can only do so much. The government can only do so much. The great changes in history, let's take segregation. That changed. That actually happened because individuals sitting in their house, feeling powerless, like they can't make a difference, got so angry or so inspired that they got in a car or a train or a bus or plane and they flew to Washington, D.C., and they found themselves standing shoulder to shoulder with 1 million other people who for one moment suspended the idea that they didn't have personal power, and they listened to Martin Luther King's dream, and segregation came to an end. Now, the Vietnam War came to an end the same way, and women's rights came into existence the same way. And if we're going to address this energy crisis in the United States and this job crisis in the United States, it's got to be individuals. And I think we have a plan. I think that we have something that can work. I know that we can do amazing things. I know that we can walk out this door and begin to change the conversation.
Switch and save. Chicago's alternative energy suppliers are sweetening up their deals. They're advertising rates lower than ComEd and even throwing in airline miles and other gimmicks to win you over.
There's more and more out there now, and I think that it was definitely overwhelming to learn.
Samira Savarala is investigating all the options, being lured away from ComEd with promises of hundreds of dollars in savings.
We'd use CFL light bulbs and power strips and turning everything off. We wanted to do something further.
I think the jury is...
We don't make any money on the actual supply of electricity. We only make money on the delivery, and that's our function, is to deliver the power reliably. So it doesn't affect us if customers switch, and actually we encourage them to look at their options.
Price down, and a lot of people are kind of confused about the issue because they think that they have been buying their electricity from ComEd, and really ComEd for the last several years has not produced the electricity itself. It simply provides the mechanism for delivering it, and that will continue to be in place. But because of the deregulation legislation, the fact is that now there's the opportunity to shop around for the best price. And some providers are going to give better prices than other providers will.
A number of Chicago's suburbs are bolting away from electricity provider Commonwealth Edison in favor of cost-cutting alternatives.
But in the end, you could cut as much as 20% off your
These companies, and again, the biggest misconception is right now everyone thinks the power is ComEd power and you'll be going to Joe's Electric. Right. That's not the case. As we're shopping, as you're shopping for these different power sources, they're all reputable sources to buy power from, correct? Everything is...
The answer, as you, the consumer, try to make up your mind.
At the end of the day, your power is a numbers game. 12%, 10%, big savings with a small switch.
I thought, well, in this economy, if there's a way to save money, why not look into it?
That's what Bill...
We don't make any money on the actual supply of electricity. We only make money on the delivery, and that's our function, is to deliver the power reliably. So it doesn't affect us if customers switch, and actually we encourage them to look at their options.
And so...
Breitbart. North American Power is one of the nation's fastest growing retail electricity suppliers. The company places community at the center of its mission, helps consumers make smarter energy choices, gives back to national and local nonprofits through fundraising programs, creates sustainable income opportunities, and offers customer a variety of energy choices that positively impact the environment.
Right now, Intel is the largest corporate buyer of renewable energy in the United States. Now, here's the power of what we can do. When we have 220,000 customers approximately, North American Power will be the largest corporate buyer of renewable energy in the United States. When we have 1,600,000 customers, now do you guys think that's impossible? To have 1,600,000 customers? Well, guess what? Here's the power of this room, and here's the power of individuals. At that point, our representatives and customers, through North American Power, will be buying more renewable, safe, clean, sustainable energy than all the corporations and all the government agencies combined.